Welcome learners, I am Dr. Taran Kapoor and I teach philosophy at Miranda House, University of Delhi. In the series of lectures on applied ethics, this lecture is going to talk about business and ethical decision making. Business ethics is an applied field. As a subfield of applied ethics, rather than being merely theoretical, business ethics is practical in nature. Applied ethics is a branch of philosophy whose subject matter is the application of moral rules, principles, or concepts to real life, actual situations. It aims to provide solutions to emerging moral dilemmas in society by facilitating ethical decision making. Philosophers, theorists, and academicians have used ethical theories and moral philosophy to address persistent problems in our society. In 1960s and 70s, the discipline of philosophy came into contact with professionals in various fields like medicine, law, business, engineering, sciences, designers, scientists, and others. This interaction led to the generation of interest in professional ethics and other related issues, leading to the development of fields like business ethics. There has been a persistent gap in the theoretical and practical spheres as one fails to understand the application of the theory to generate public policy and resolve moral problems. Business ethics discusses pertinent matters like affirmative action, moral issues in the workplace, privacy, freedom of information, obligation to future generations, intellectual property rights, discrimination based on race and sex, among others. Moral dilemmas are situations where an individual is faced with crucial ethical questions like what I ought to do, what is the morally right thing to do. Moral dilemmas involve conflicts in decision making in real, that is, past and present events, or future possibilities, moral outcomes of drawing a certain legal document, and other such situations. For instance, in the sphere of business, there may be possible conflicts between the rights and obligations of the consumer and producer of goods, the conflicts related to the rights of the employer and employees, and several others. We have already considered many dilemmas in Introduction to Business Ethics lecture. Now, significance of business ethics. According to a famous saying, good business ethics promotes good business always. Business ethics not only encourages professionals and professionalism in management, but it also helps us, the businessmen, in inculcating values in their lives and purify their inner self. There are positive consequences of good business practices, like business with ethics always results in positive outcomes. This is because when ethical conduct is followed in business, it builds mutual trust, confidence, acceptance of rules, and approval by the society. There is also inner satisfaction. Every businessman is seeking mental peace and satisfaction, which is free from anxious situation, and to attain this kind of a mental stability, only ethics can promote good business practices. It is also the social responsibility of the businessmen towards society that they should not implement unethical conduct to earn profits in their business. Goodwill of the business organization and businessman. Good ethical conduct will always promote the goodwill of both businesses as well as businessmen. For a successful business, a good public image is important because once a business organization's image is blemished, it directly affects the sales, profits, and image of the business. Then there are issues of success and development. Ethical business practices, ethical environments in business ultimately lead to the development and success of businesses. The sincere hard work and honest effort of a person makes a person moral and helps them to achieve success in their efforts in business. New ethical principles are needed in new management for overall development and honor of the organization. It also encourages and motivates others to follow the path of ethical conduct if some businessmen have earned profits by following ethical principles, thereby setting examples for others to follow. Now, business ethics has grabbed attention due to the many scams and illegal business practices that have exposed in recent times. In business, unethical behavior is not acceptable at any cost. It is important for entity to ensure safety of the consumers and be ethical in business practices. There are two examples of misconduct on the part of certain business entities. Let us go by the first example. Metalic Mobile Company, a renowned mobile company named Metalic Mobile, launched logo phones in 2010 and it was sold widely all over the world, but due to the worldwide reports of battery failures, heating issues, phone catching fire, thousands of these phones were replaced by new safe phones by that company, causing huge embarrassment and economic loss to the company. But the new safe phones were again found to have some of the same problems, which many customers then reported heating of the battery, among others, in the replaced phones. Now, many countries banned on carrying the logo phones on planes, in the checked-in baggages, and in the hand baggage. Unable to fix this problem, the mobile company had to completely stop the sale of this phone across the world. The report suggested that Metalic company had to take the loss of about $3.9 billion due to this. Due to this technological failure to ensure safety of the product resulted in economic loss of faith of consumers in Metalic Mobile Company products happened. Now, there are important frameworks for business ethics, like application of ethical theories. These are normative ethical theories, like theories on deontology, consequentialism, virtue ethics, Rawls theory, among others. Now, business ethicists seek to understand the ethical contours of business activity. One way of advancing this project is by choosing a normative framework and teasing out the implications of that framework for the business issues. In principle, it is possible to do this for any normative framework. Let us discuss 4 frameworks that have received significant attention in this field. Deontology. Important approach to the study of business ethics comes from deontology. Deontology is a duty-based ethics. We have a moral duty to do things which are right and not to do things which are wrong. The term deontology is said to be derived from the Greek word deon, which means duty, to do the right thing. According to Immanuel Kant, moral principles and laws guide the individual's choices of what they ought to do. Kantian reasoning is called non-consequentialist or deontological since it does not look at the consequences. Rather, it considers the law or duty which governs our actions. In Groundwork of Metaphysics of Morals, Kant grounds our duty and morality in rationality itself. For Kant, we have duties to ourselves as we are rational beings and autonomous beings. For instance, Mahatma Gandhi upheld that non-violence is our duty, and there is a long discussion about Nishkam Karma as our duty in Bhagavad Gita, in the sermon given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Categorical imperative are commands that we impose on us as rational beings. Immanuel Kant's claim that humanity should be treated always as an end and never as a means only has proved especially fruitful for analyzing the human interactions at the core of commercial transactions. In competitive markets, people may be tempted to deceit, be dishonest, cheat, use, exploit, or even manipulate others to gain an edge over the others. Kantian moral theory singles out these actions as violations of human dignity because in each of these actions, we manipulate the other, which is the other human being, and do not give them their due human dignity. In this way, we use them as a means towards propagating our ends. So, categorical imperative is based on three principles or maxims. The first is act in such a manner that we can also will at the same time that action becomes a universal law. Act in such a way, the second maxim, that you always treat human beings as an end and never merely as means to your ends. And the third formulation of categorical imperative is act like a law-making member of a kingdom of ends. So he's providing us the autonomy to make our own laws in and follow the duty as the highest command in the kingdom of ends. The second normative ethical theory is consequentialism. Now, according to this view, the consequences or results of our actions are regarded as being the ultimate basis for any judgment about the rightness or wrongness of that particular action. According to this ethical theory, the consequences of an action decide whether the action is right or not. If the consequence of an action produces happiness or intrinsic good, then that action is considered as right. If it produces pain, then that action is wrong. These theories can be seen in two stages. The first one is ethical egoism. If the consequence of an action produces happiness of an individual, then that action is right, so it is individual-centric. The more popular one is that of utilitarianism or altruistic hedonism. If the consequence of an action produces happiness for maximum number of people, then the action is right, and if it produces pain, then it is wrong. According to classical utilitarianism, given by Bentham and Mill, happiness is the only consequence which matters. That action is said to be right, which brings about more happiness in comparison to any other action in the given situation. The good entails in the greatest good of the greatest number by minimizing pain and maximizing happiness. It is this theory that consequence of an action becomes important, motive and intention are not so important. For Jeremy Bentham, all kinds of happiness are qualitatively and quantitatively same. But for J.S. Mill, who is his successor, there are two levels of happiness. Lower level related to bodily pleasures, momentary pleasures, and higher levels of contemplation, contentment and self-realization. So a while back we did some of the ends which and values which we should aim for doing a business. And one of them was that business is for our contentment, satisfaction, and should be taken as a higher aim towards which we are aspiring, rather than treating it as just an exercise to gain profits. Ethical theory, including virtue ethics and deontology, are useful for thinking about how individuals should relate to each other. And we'll do what is virtue ethics in a while. But business ethics also comprehends the laws and regulations that structure markets and firms, and that's why we also need to pay attention towards consequentialist theories. Here, political theories are also of some relevance, like a number of ethicists have sought to identify the implications of Rawls' famous theory, justice as fairness, for business. Now, Rawls was a Kantian in his moral philosophy. This is not an easy task, however, to implement or try to implement, making suggestive remarks about market and firms based on Rawls' theory of justice as fairness, because he has never specified, articulated or specified conclusions or developed detailed arguments for how will his theory be framed given a market and market situation. Now we come to the third most important theory of normative ethics, virtue ethics. Morality is not just about the consequences or abiding by moral laws and duties. Instead, morality is about a virtuous character. This theory focuses on evaluating the character of the ethical agent. Virtues are seen as acquired habits that help us to lead a rational life. Virtuous person is able to perceive the requirement of the situation and then act accordingly. Ancient Greek philosopher Plato recognized four cardinal virtues like temperance, courage, wisdom, and justice. Virtues are defined as acquired habits to exhibit a proper balance between the two extremes, that is, of excess and deficiency of an action, finding thereby a means between the two extremes, and this is called the golden mean. Aristotle has emphasized the study of human nature, that is, certain characteristic virtues that we value in ourselves, as well as we respect those values and virtues in others. He focuses on what and how to be a good person and explains then to have that to live a meaningful life, people should develop good virtues of character. In the Middle Ages, Christian philosophers added faith, hope, charity, love to this list of virtues. Now, virtue is a mean between the two excesses or vices, like courage is seen as a virtue which can be seen as a golden mean between boldness, which is an excess, and deficiency, which is being coward. So, when we are firm and humble, it is then that we are courageous. Now, Moore develops and applies MacIntyre's virtue ethics. MacIntyre has developed his virtue ethics based on Aristotle. Moore has applied it to business. For MacIntyre, there are goods internal to practices, and certain virtues are necessary to achieve those goods. And then we can see, building on MacIntyre, that Moore has developed the idea that business is a practice and thus has certain goods which are internal to it. So, business is a value-laden practice, the attainment of which requires that the cultivation of business ethics and business virtues is given foremost importance. Aristotelian approaches to virtue in business are found in many other philosophers, and the idea that good life is achieved in a community is also gaining momentum. This is and has considered how business communities must be structured in such a way that they help other members in a reciprocatory manner. Now, there is another approach, the approach on market failures approach. According to Heth, in 2014, he has written, the justification of the market is that it produces efficient outcomes, but this only happens when the conditions of perfect competition obtain, such as perfect information, no market power, no barriers to entry or exit. On market failures approach, these conditions are the sources of ethical rules for market actors. It is, however, difficult to select any one normative framework for applying it to a range of issues which we encounter in a variety of situations in our life. So, indeed, the more common approach is to identify a business activity and then analyze it using a mid-level principle or ideals which are common to many normative ethical theories. Many ethical issues arise at the nexus of firms' engagement with three important groups: the one of consumers, the other of employees, and the third of society. Now, there are several factors which influence ethical decision making in business. The first factor is leadership. The role of leaders towards the achievement of common goal is very, very important. Leaders are mentors and model that guide, influence, motivate others to work and follow the ethical principles. It is necessary that leaders have a virtuous moral character, like we have seen in Aristotle's ethics, and they set examples and moderate their conduct, because where there are good leaders, there will be good ethical practices. Now, another important factor is of sustainable development. Any organization must use natural resources wisely and should be ethical in its utilization. So, the principle of sustainable development must be followed for a protection of resources for future generations, and this is a debate in the light of carbon footprint businesses and even individuals are generating with each activity they perform. Now, another factor which influences ethical decision making is corporate culture. It is a combination of set of values, beliefs, goals, norms that prevail within an organization. So, organizations should work as a community which is accounting for welfare of each and every member of the corporate. Strategy and performance are other factors to motivate and integrate ethical code of conduct into business strategies. Certain questions are always given priority in business, like what do we stand for? What is our aim and objective? What values should we follow for the welfare of the society? Let us look into a case study. Pollution fraud by Volkswagen. Volkswagen started a big marketing campaign to push the sales of its diesel cars in the United States, claiming low pollution levels. Many models of the cars were sold all over the world. The Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) of USA found that nearly 480,000 Volkswagen cars sold in the US had special software that was intended to avoid pollution level detection. This software enabled diesel engines in these cars to detect when they were being tested and change the engine performance accordingly to improve the test results. The German car giant later admitted to cheating pollution tests using the software. Nearly 11 million cars sold all over the world had possibly such software incorporated in them. The EPA found that actual emission levels were much higher than the test results showed, while the company maintained that only a small number of cars are affected. The loss of consumer confidence in Volkswagen cars can be enormous. The recall of cars can be a very costly affair. In addition, EPA can also fine the company now, and there can be litigations by consumers which can really turn out to be costly for the company. It is reported in the press that federal court has, in the case against Volkswagen, settled for a penalty in billions of dollars, which the company had to pay for the pollution fraud, which it did to so many customers. The case illustrates unethical behavior on the part of the business ethics, which should be a lesson for business enterprises to ensure safety and be ethical in business practices. Let us now analyze the conflict between the business interest on the one hand and protecting the environment on the other. Now, there are two extreme positions related to the issue. It is often encountered that businesses do not take total blame for environmental problems they bring about. Some thinkers hold that business should always come first. It is not business' fault that environmental problems exist. Interference by nature-loving do-gooders will ruin the business, our economy, the profits made, and even our society. If they are not interfered with, then the business and science will eventually find answers to environmental problems. If they are not interfered with, business and science will eventually find answers to environmental problems. Business has always operated in good faith and could not have foreseen these problems. Therefore, why should it shoulder any blame? Another point of defense is changes required to solve environmental problems are way too expensive, and business should not have to suffer this burden, which will be a big economic burden on the business. Now, some thinkers hold that environment should always come first. They give their defense as follows. We have been ruining the environment, and the only solution now is to stop all destruction activities before it gets too late. Businesses must take the major blame for environmental problems and hazards they have caused. If they are not interfered with, business and science will eventually find answers to environmental problems. Business has always operated in good faith and could not have foreseen these problems. Therefore, why should it shoulder any blame? Another point of defense is that changes required to solve environmental problems are way too expensive, and business should not have to suffer this economical burden. Now, some thinkers hold that environment should always come first, and they have their own line of arguments to defend their position. The arguments are that we have been ruining the environment, and only solution now is to stop all the destruction activities before it gets too late. Businesses must take the major blame for our environmental problems. Business, through its use of advertising, has caused the consumption at all costs syndrome, where audience is served this idea of a lack in their life. And this kind of scarcity generated leads to environmental depletion. Governments should immediately pass legislation to ensure clean and safe environment. Governments should make must conduct a massive re-education of everyone in the society, including business people. If businesses are destroyed in the process, then so be it. Environment comes first and should be saved at all costs. Now, there does exist a moderate view on business and environment, which is like Aristotelian golden mean in the virtue ethics we did a while back, about the moderation between environment pro activists and business for all laissez-faire activity proponents. Now, this moderate position says business is not totally to blame for the destruction of the environment. Government and society in general should share the blame because businessmen are coming from the society and business is done as per the requirements of the society. So, business, government and society should work together in order to stop this destruction, recognizing that we all have ethical obligations to protect human beings and the environment together. Now, we can take another case study to understand business ethics dilemmas and the responsibilities for a corporate business. Susan, a design engineer in a major auto company, receives 2 reports concerning engine fires and explosions that occurred in hot weather in company's popular economy car. At the time, the engine of this model had been approved and released for production. She had advised the plant that she felt the carburetor and gas lines were constructed so that under excessive heat conditions there could be a gas leak. At that time, she had argued for a modification that would have added about $50 to the cost of producing each engine. But her proposal had been turned down because the cost she was suggesting was way too high and would have not helped the company meet the profit margin in any way. So she had continued to argue for the modification and for special testing, but the standard test performed on the car did not indicate any danger, and she was told then by the management to drop the issue. Upon receiving the 2 reports, however, Susan again pressed for special testing under excessive heat conditions and urges the company to warn the public and immediately recall the cars of this model. By this time, however, such a recall will probably cost the company between $1 million to another $1 million. And Suzanne is again told to mind her own business, otherwise she will be fired. In the meantime, 4 more reports of engine fires came in from a desert area in the southwest. The engineer is now convinced that she is right. What should she do? To what extent does she owe loyalty to the company, where she has worked for 50 years and has been promoted several times, and to what extent is she obliged or obligated to the public, so that the public knows the truth? Because the company is taking the responsibility of the engineer, should she do something about what she knows? Or should she just drop the problem, considering that the company may lose up to $1 million? What are its obligations? What do you think of the way it has handled the entire situation? Now, if we try to analyze this case, the case is a good example where production and profit in business take precedence over safety. Manufacturers are often loath to increase the cost of their production. In order to make their products safer, they would rather take the risk that no harm will result from this and that the product will be safe enough. Obviously, this case has already illustrated this attitude often results not only in a threat to the people's health and lives, but also in a higher cost in the long run to the manufacturers in good public relations as well as in money. This car company compounded its original mistake by ignoring the fact that the mistake was costing lives, making no effort to rectify it once the mistake was discovered. Furthermore, the company even threatened to penalize the employee who was trying to rectify the problem. In this situation, public health, well-being should have been the main priority, not the profit or loss. The design engineer was right in diligently attempting to correct the safety error, and for the car manufacturer to consistently penalize her for her ethics instead of rewarding her in a perfect example of misplaced priorities and values. Susan's first ethical obligation but towards the protection of innocent lives and to her own sense of right and wrong, rather than loyalty to a company that was unethical in its actions towards others. By these unethical actions, in fact, the company nullified any obligations its employees might have had to be loyal to it. One need not and should not be loyal to an organization which is unethical and does not value virtues. The engineer should have quit or allowed herself to be fired and then reported what she knew to the public authorities. This action would have provoked an investigation, stopped production of the car until proper corrections were made, and forced the manufacturer to recall cars already sold so that their safety problems could be corrected. It obviously behooves every company to be exceptionally prudent when the safety of consumers is concerned, and in the long run, such a policy will cost companies less. The research engineer cannot shirk her own ethical responsibility just because the company has removed direct responsibility from her, as the lives of innocent peoples are definitely involved here. Losing her job may be hard, but she really has no other choice if she wishes to act ethically in this case. With this, we come to an end of this lecture, where we saw how normative ethical theories are involved and facilitate us in making better decisions in business, thereby facilitating ethical decision making. For the benefit of learners, I am sharing some references where they can enhance their understanding of this topic from. Thank you.